It's like that back at home. That controls that curtain, I think, for that reflection from that thing out there. All right. Back home. Mega sleepy eyes. What was that, a 4-dayer, I think, or something? Put it on the water. A crooked hat. I always make big crooked hats crooked. I don't know why. I always make them all lopsided, taken off and on. And they get formed that way. But anyway, yeah. That fishing beats the shit out of you. So many people say, oh, you're fishing out all day out there? Must be so easy. So nice. It's not easy. It beats the living crap all out of you. Was it 8-foot swells yesterday? 8 or 10s? Fairly tight between waves. You're standing in the stern on your feet the whole time, going back and forth, working the gear, trying. Tough slug in the past few days. Tough. But everybody got fish. But like one of my friends, one of the best fishermen I know, he hasn't caught a salmon in 3 days. Another buddy of mine, same thing. He was struggling. Caught a couple. Our friend Jeff from here and his son came out. I think they got like 10 or something, so that was good. And then it was really petering off for me. I think we got, with our 1-dayer yesterday, we got 2 in the boat and lost 2 or 3. It was tough. Tough. But I got it done. Then by the time I get home last evening, you're just like so cross-eyed tired. Haven't seen Sarah in a few days, and she's like, talking away. We went out for something to eat, and I'm just like, you feel bad because you feel like you're a living frickin' zombie. But anyway, we caught up today. Now, what's going on? I'm going to share some emails this morning. And then immediately after I do this, Thomas Oswald from Florida. Remember? He was fishing on the beach talking to me. Thomas is coming back on here with me. So we're going to have a good chat. He's got a lot more to share, I believe. And then we'll make sure that goes smoothly. And then I'll probably throw him on here tomorrow, I'm thinking. And then I think tomorrow, Mike the Rancher is on here, who was outfitter rancher, I think, Colorado. And he all of a sudden came to the realization these people were on his ranch and on his property, and they're taking game, taking antlers and heads, taking feed sacks out of the barn. He was getting a cannon ready to go to war with these beings. All sorts of shit going down, right? Your typical A-type mountain man, rancher, hunting guide, outfitter. A lot of that social group of people, type of social group, what do you want to call it? Culture. Most people kind of snicker at the topic, and if they get a little hint that it might be real, they don't say anything because they don't want to be ridiculed from their fellow A-type dudes out there. But Mike just came right out and said it. This is what I've been doing. This is what's going down. I'm dealing with it. I'm not happy about it. And I put him in contact with Scott Carpenter, and I believe that helped iron out a bunch of problems he was having. And I'm looking forward to the update because they figured out how to coexist on that property, or they come and go. We're going to find out tomorrow, I believe. Anyway, here we are, coming to you live from British owned and ran Canadistan. That's right, folks. British owned and ran. So funny. Yeah, it's so funny. I don't know why the king and the queen are on all of our coins and all of our money in Canada. I don't get it. Is this because we're just big fans of Britain? Right? In your face, Canada. In your face. So, where are we? Here we go. Fresh out of the pan. Delivered to us. Spruce Hedge, Ontario sighting continued. Hi again, Steve and the Howd Hunt gang. My name is Sharon McHugh. McHugh. And yes, you may say it aloud. Right on, Sharon. You're a brave lady. Figured I should elaborate on first email I sent in regarding Spruce Hedge and Sarnia, Ontario Saw-Bay sightings. The Spruce Hedge, Ontario sighting was back in June of 1993. An individual I'm familiar with and his girlfriend at the time were driving home from a party and decided to take a detour on a dirt road to, park. They were fooling around in the parked car in the middle of the night, and at some point, as light came, the man left the vehicle to pee. It was then he had a real good sighting of a male sabe who seemed to be curious about them as well. It was described as most are very tall, huge, muscular like a bodybuilder, wide across the shoulders and hairy. He was so close, he could see the color of his fingernails, which he said were gray in color. They observed each other for a bit, and then the sabe was on his way into the bush, looking back once at them. I gather this information from the blank. I know how you feel about that organization anyway. Mr. Warren took 5 years to tell his story. This sparked my interest even more on the subject since that area was my childhood playground. That land now has moose on it, which was unheard of years ago. It's not that far from Algonquin Park. An hour and a half drive away is my guess. The other sighting in the Sarnia area, where I presently reside, happened on the River Road, we call it, along the St. Clair River back in 1969. I acquired this knowledge from your YouTube channel, and it really perked my ears as well. A couple were driving home from a drive-in theater date night, I believe is how the story goes, when a Sasquatch had come up from the river's edge and walked across the road in front of the vehicle. When they shared the story back then, they were told to keep it quiet. Sheesh, eh? Anyway, I thought I'd give more info on those two sightings, as my first email about them was vague, as I was blah blah blahing about my dad's land and history, etc. Even though to my knowledge I have not seen nor heard a sabe myself. I'm a believer and a truth seeker. Take care out there always, people. Have a beacon on your person. Thank you, Steve, for what you and Sarah both do for the sabe community and more. Continue enjoying your summer. Doing what you love is right. I've been enjoying your YouTube channel for at least 5 or 6 years now. Cheers, Sharon. A believer and truth seeker. All right, Sharon, appreciate it. Appreciate you sharing and your time, looking into it. Myself, I prefer to call it a knower. It's a knowing. It's an accepting of the knowledge and knowing, or knowing at the same time. If you know firsthand, but it's knowing, I like to say. Oh, this is for me. All right? For me only. Hold on a minute, you guys. All right, who's next? This is titled, Holy Crap, Boat Stories. Steve, a couple of weeks ago, you were asking if anybody had any wild boat adventures. Actually, no, I wasn't. I said any crazy-ass outdoor adventure, any outdoor stories, hunting stories, crazy hunting stories, hiking, camping, boating, real-world adventure stories. And by coincidence, we had a couple boat stories. Looks like I might get another one. I'm all over it. Well, here's one of mine and one of my cousin's. I previously sent you my Sasquatch encounters. From over the years, I guess this story starts with my father and I, and Fred Luneman. In 1968, we saw the two at Star Lake, above Lake Tahoe, fishing. The only reference to what these things were was when my father found the Patterson-Gimlin film on TV and brought me in the living room to show me what they were. I tried researching them in school. Very little was to be found on the Sabe people. Now jump forward to 1986. We live in Placerville, taking my boat over on the coast too, Shelter Cove. There's a period every 3 or 4 words in this. That's a change. So it's a typo. We live in Placerville, taking my boat over on the coast to Shelter Cove. I'd recently met some people up there and realized my boat could fish those waters. So on our way over to the coast, my mother and father was following me and my wife and young son JC on our way to the coast. We came to Bigfoot Crossing as a tourist stop, and my father and I spent a couple hours in there reading all we could about these people. Onward to Shelter Cove. Well, dropping down from Guerneville to Shelter Cove, I lost my brakes on my truck. Oh no. I didn't let my wife know until we got to the bottom. As I used emergency brake and ran the stop sign, I didn't have an exhaust brake on it then, and was able to get it into low range for the rest of the grade. We spent the first day of the Memorial Day weekend in the bar because of the whitecaps out there. The following day, a man, Walt Mitchell, who ran a charter business out of there, and some skivs. He ran a charter business out of there and some SKIVBS. You'd call him up on the CB and he would come to your camp in his high crop tractors and pick up your boat and trailer with you and your gear in the boat, back you down the long steep ramp and out about 50 to 75 yards in the water and release you and returning your boat back to your camp. Well, we get started up, take off, and the next thing I know, we're on top of the rock pile as the wave goes out. We're high and dry on this rock pile, and my boat tips to one side. With quite a surprise on our face, my father and I looked at each other like, what the heck are we going to do now? The next wave came in and picked us up, but the tide was going out fast, and all of a sudden there's a man at the back of my boat pushing us off the rock pile. I thought, what service? The next thing I know, the man jumps in the back of my boat, and I replied, thank you very much, but I can't take you back to shore. He begins to tell us that his buddies had the same thing happen to them, and he's pushing them off. As he's pushing them off, they got swamped and is concerned about him, so we let out trying to find them. Oh, they're out there. We finally found them out in the cove, and their boat is completely filled to the waterline, their ice chest floating away, and some of their gear. So they wanted me to give them a tow so they could drain the water out. I thought, no way. All right. We tied off to a cleat. I told my father, get your pocket knife out, and if that boat goes down, cut that friggin' rope. With all the power I had, we got to move in as they pull the plug. And that water sucked out of that boat right now. I could not believe it. I gave him a can of ether to dry out. They got started, thank you very much. It was a Boston whaler, and I believe that's a boat you need to have unsinkable. My father and I fished the cove, trolling and get our 4 salmon. And I had to drag a bucket to slow myself down to the right trolling speed. But we managed to catch our 4. So then I took him out 3 miles out to this whistle where I knew the reef was for bottom fishing. Bunch of typos. No biggie. My father was concerned how far we were going out, but I told him you could still see land, kind of. It was pretty flat that day in the cove, but out at the reef, big rollers, and I mean big. You go down the bottom of those and you wouldn't see nothing until you're coming up on the high side. Then you'll see. Well, we're getting plenty of red snapper, black snapper in this reef. Then I hooked into something big. Dad kept saying, oh, you got bottom. I kept saying, no, I don't, it's moving. Pulling stripping line. But my gear wasn't heavy enough to bring it up, so on the up rollers, I'd hold my thumbs on the drum, and on the down swell, I could reel like hell and gain what I could until the fish would decide to run again. It must have taken an hour to get that fish off the bottom. My dad said, oh, cut your line. You can't get it in. You got a shark or something. But I wasn't about to. I eventually got it up to the boat and see that it's a giant lingcod. Dad had a gaff ready. I can just see it. If I hit my line and twang, it was gone. So I told him to grab the net. I had a big net, and he got it in the net, but he couldn't pull it on board. So the two of us pulled it on board, bending my net like into a 90 degree. When that fish got in the boat, it looked like it tore my boat to pieces. It was on top of my club, so I couldn't hit it. Thrashing around, it flung our ice chest of beer out of the boat, along with some other gear that I had, to now retrieve. So not having anything to hit it with, my dad gets in my toolbox and gets a ball peen hammer out and peens it in the head, killing it. Now the fun starts. A few minutes later, I caught another big one. Not quite as big, but actually I caught them. We were jigging for snappers, and I got the big one on it. He came up to get one of the snappers off my jig line and got caught on all the hooks. So I had it in the belly and the mouth, so the big one could really run. Found out later, we weighed it. It was 47 pounds, one of the biggest lingcods that have ever came out of the waters in quite some time. And I got a 27-pound lingcod about 20 minutes later. As I looked out to sea, I can tell the rollers were starting to whitecap. Uh-oh. We then thought we should head in, so we got our anchor pulled up and headed in. Now the rollers are getting real big and starting to break. And all these other boats came flying past me like nothing heading in. We just rode the waves. And in the bottom of the swell, power up and back off, I rode over. By the time we got back to the boat ramp, you had to call Walt on the CB and he would bring your trailer down. With all the chaos, I didn't have a free hand to get to the CB until I got in. I found out that we were 13th in line to be taken out. So us, along with about 20 other boats, were going around in circles as these waves crashed in, flooding us. My dad was bailing with that 5-gallon bucket as we went in circles trying to stay out of harm's way. When I finally seen our trailer coming down, I headed for it. Walt had backed out. His usual 75 yards or so with my trailer. The wind was blowing pretty good. I put some boat guides and where to help you on the trailer. Walt reaching down from his tractor seat with my chain is going to snap into the front of my boat. My father's lifting the motor. And about that time, a big wave hit us in the transom. My dad flies back, snapping off my pedestal seat, and now he's under the dash. The boat goes up over my trailer and onto the tractor seat. The stack of the tractor stopped me. I thought I was killed. I thought I'd killed Walt. Walt, where are you? Where are you? He had to jump from the seat and the tractor down into the water. He finally came up soaking wet. And I'm like, man, I thought I'd killed you. He said, that was close. He told us back to camp. And I left our fish down with my wife and mother, and we came back and cleaned them. That's when I found out it was a 47-pounder. And Walt said it was one of the biggest lingcods that had ever been caught there at some time. Right away, some Chinese fellow was trying to buy the head and liver off of me, or some voodoo shit or aphrodisiac. I brought the head home and mounted it and put it on the wall with the mouth open. You could take a basketball and put it in its mouth. I was waiting to take it to my taxidermist along with some big rattlesnakes I wanted to have mounted and tell my wife I found them and threw them out without me knowing. I was so pissed. That was quite a day fishing, though. We had to head home the next day to return back to work. My cousin, Beverly, it must have been 40 years ago, maybe a little more. I remember it when it happened. Her and her husband had a small cabin cruiser and would go down in the bay in Delta and fish for sturgeons. They'd taken long when my father's friends, Dan Oldicke, which must have weighed 450 to 500 pounds at least. He was a big man. The day they went out, she said, it's so foggy their husband Roger had to use his chart and compass and got him out of the harbor and out to where they were going to fish, she said. When the fog lifted, it rolled all at once, and they're right next to the mothball fleet. And there's a giant ship right alongside them. She freaked out. She had a 3-month-old baby with her and thought the ship was going to run them over. But they're an old Navy fleet anchored off the bay in the mothball fleet. So as the day went on, they're having some luck fishing, and she's frying up these same fish for lunch. And the day goes on, and as the tide comes in, they go to pull up the anchor, and it had gotten caught in one of the big chains from the ship. Oh no. They're trying to get it untangled. It gets wrapped around the prop. Oh my God. Now the tide's coming in fast, pulling the rope down by the stern. So Big Dan has to go up front of the boat and get on the bow. Beverly has to hold Roger's feet as he goes underwater trying to cut the rope out from the prop. This goes on for some time. Evidently the prop was way down there. As he's having a hard time getting it cut out and unwrapped from the prop, it's now pulling them down by the stern as the tide comes in. Holding her husband with all of her might by his ankles, he keeps going down underwater, cutting that rope away and getting it untangled. Then finally they do, and the boat rights itself. She said she's never so scared in her life, plus having a 3-month-old baby. They thought they were going to be pulled under by the tide. She said the water was already up to the gunnels and the bilge pump was pumping as fast as it could, but it was losing the battle. And every time the boat stories come up, she always tells that one the same way like it happened. Well, that's my holy shit bulls boat stories. I almost killed Walt Mitchell, and they almost drowned in the bay, next to the mothball fleet. You got to remember, back in those days, they didn't have radio. only had a compass. And oh yeah, the fog set back in. Thanks for telling my stories. These are true events. Retold the best of my knowledge. You can use my name, John Wunschel, a.k.a. Hangtown John. P.S. This summer I told my cousin about the Sasquatch encounters I had on the property that he purchased from Norm Hendrickson in the Crystal Basin area at Pearl Lake. They think I'm nuts. I told them that they'll come find me when they see one, and I hope they do. Thanks, Steve, for all you're doing. I sent my stories in years ago, and it's a relief to get it out there, out of your mind, and even on the paper. Thanks, Steve, Sarah, and Chippy. How did he do in the contest? Can't forget Ruby. I lost my horse years ago. He had a stroke, and I had to put him down. That was the hardest thing. With all my might, I could not pull the trigger. My dad had to take the gun away and shoot him for me. Okay. Lucky. What? Lucky was out of Tar Flat, and Tar Flat was out of Man of War ? We paid $74 at a sheriff's sale, and that's why we called him Lucky. He's lucky to get a good home, and we're lucky to only pay $74. He was a good horse. He's waiting for me in heaven to ride again. Right on, Lucky. P.S. again, sorry there's misspelling and typos. Here's some extra periods and commas, I guess. I was dreaming about deer hunting in school instead of paying attention to the teacher. That must be why I know so much today. LOL. All right, appreciate your email, man. It is a bit of a grind reading it, but we got the gist of it. Appreciate you, man. Appreciate everybody, no matter what. Yeah, this big lingcod, they get pretty big. The biggest one I ever caught, well, I didn't catch it, but on the boat I was guiding at it was mid island, up island. I thought it was pretty big halibut the whole time, by the way the guy was fighting it. And then that halibut came up, and it was a 65-pound halibut. It was frickin' huge. And there was 3 boats. It was one huge group, 3 boats. They're all having a personal little fishing derby, and they're all good guys. So there's 15-pound lead balls we use on the boat for the downriggers to get the lines down. 15-pound cannonball. And just joke around, I threw 3 of those down its throat into its stomach, and it ate him like nothing. Just to pretend we're cheating. You know what I mean? Obviously, like when the dock boy came up, he went and went to pick up the lingcod, and right away looks at me. Really, Steve? And I'm like, what? 30 pounds of lead. No, 45 pounds of lead in his belly, and he couldn't even tell. Then he spilled his coffee. And I'll tell you another quick one. One time, my cousin and I were fishing on the Saanich Inlet, close to the head of it, on the backside of Sydney, British Columbia. And my uncle and aunt lived right on the water there years ago. And I don't know how old we were, probably 10 or something, or 9. I don't know. And there's this tiny little rowboat. Back in the day, rowboats had a snub stern and bow on them. Square. There's a plywood rowboat with 2 little bench seats in it. Who knows how long it was? 8 feet? 6 feet? Probably 6 feet. And we rowed out to this concrete marker that's on this rock ledge offshore. And there's a summer evening, like about this time of year maybe, and a bunch of boats are all circled around this thing, drifting around, jigging for salmon or whatever. And we rowed all the way out there, these 2 little snotty punks. Started jigging. Also, my rod buckled over. And then it really buckled over. And it took forever to get this thing up. And it was a monster lingcod. What happened was, I'd hooked a salmon, about a 7-pound salmon, and this thing came up and grabbed the salmon. And just the lips of the salmon were sticking out of its mouth. And I don't know what happened. I had it at the top of the water. We're like, what do we do now? It's as big as the boat. And we're yelling for help. And those great big boats, they're looking over, and people are looking over, and one guy, his wife's pulling the gear, and they start motoring over to us to help us get this Goliath. And then right then the lingcod spit the salmon out, and the salmon went swimming away, and the lingcod went swimming after it. And did get the lingcod, but I got the salmon. And then about 15 minutes later, dropped the jig down. If I didn't hook the same lingcod again by the mouth, same thing, got him to the top, or screamed for help again. And the boat starts coming over, and then he shook his head, spit the hook, and got away. Lots of outdoor stories. But the anchoring rope, what I tell everyone when I'm out anchoring offshore, I mean, not where the tides are fast. I always tell everyone, if you're gonna die out there, it's gonna be from screwing up with anchoring. But I used to anchor off a place called Race Rocks, south end of Vancouver Island, Victoria, and the tide used to scream through there. Like if you got your stern, the leg of your motor wrapped around that anchor rope, it's just gonna go kapoof, doom, boom, down you go. I remember one time in a halibut derby years back, there's a guy in about a 30-foot sea ray, real nice guy, old guy, inboard, outboard, and he got his anchor rope wrapped around his stern, and he was stern into the current, and he was picking up speed, and we went over there and did the same thing. I went waist deep off the back of our boat, front of my boat, tied up to him, then went down, and I cut that rope, and I freed up his boat so he wouldn't get sunk. But anchoring's nothing to screw around with. It's anchoring on the ocean sinks so many boats where there's big tides. Anyway, a little off topic there, aren't we? All right, there's no title in this one. There's no email either. But we got a name. We mark this as read. Steve, I've been watching the channel for about a year now. What you're doing here is a good thing. Just having some place to tell our experiences without ridicule or eye-rolling responses can sometimes be enough. Most of us didn't ask or seek out what happened to us. With that said, here's what I wasn't looking for. It was the spring turkey season 2012. And like every spring since my daughter was 8 years old, we were together hunting wild turkeys in southern Indiana. This particular trip, we were hunting on a decommissioned military proving grounds that had been turned over to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and is now a refuge. 58,000 acres of beautiful oak hardwoods, prairie grasses, and swamps. The Air National Guard still maintains the air wing there, and they fly A-10 Warthog training runs there all the time. If you ever heard of an A-10 on approach at 200 feet of altitude, it's enough to make you hit the dirt. I only mention the airbase because that's where we were, right next to it in Area 14. I had maps scouted an old abandoned 2-track road in the middle of our area and thought it'd be a great strutting zone for big toms. But halfway in towards the old road, we came to the edge of a very deep ravine. That's when I got the most overwhelming feeling of dread and fear. Something was telling me, do not go down there. I took a map reading, and the only way to get to my target spot was to cross this ravine. So I called a series of yelps to see if it was worth it, and immediately got a gobble on the ridge towards the ravine. Immediately got a gobble on the ridge top, across the ravine. So I shrugged off the fear, and down into the darkness we went. Mind you, the sun was in full glory in this 180-foot deep ravine, and this 180-foot deep ravine is canopy dark as shit. We get almost to the bottom, and it hits me again, that feeling. Except this time, it's not go down there, it's get the hell out. That's when the first tree broke off. My daughter, who hasn't said a word, says, "That sounded like a tree broke in half, not fallen over." We hit the bottom, which was dry creek bed, and start up the other side, and another tree snaps, and then another. I said, "What the hell is that?" And my daughter, who's 16 at the time, says, "Sasquatch." I didn't even have time to process what she said. And the most powerful high-pitched screech/scream that lasted what seemed like minutes goes off about 40 yards to our 6 o'clock in the creek bed. I froze, and she jacked in a shell. Good girl. I touched her on the shoulder and motioned up to the top of the ravine, and we start climbing. It took us a few minutes to reach the top, and during that climb out, we heard at least 2 more trees break. So now we're out of the ravine, but the wrong side from the truck. I checked the map, and the only way out without going back across the ravine was walk the old 2-track literally to the Air Force Base fence, and along it to the gravel road we came in on. About a 2-mile swing. And just as we're going to head towards the base, we hear crashing in the woods from where we just were. 3 white-tailed deer burst out of the woods with their eyes wild with fear. They ran across the 2-track and into the woods on the other side. And that's when we get scream number 2. It was farther away, but just as terrifying. We made the walk out, hardly talking at all, and to this day she doesn't like to talk about it. I can't go in the woods anymore without thinking about that day. I refuse to go alone, and my love of hunting has already taken a beating. I still go out, but not like I used to. I used to eat, sleep, and drink hunting. One more thing that happened that day I just thought of. You had to check out at the property office when you leave the refuge, and when we were checking out, one of the staff asked my daughter if we saw anything, and my daughter said, 3 scared deer and heard a Sasquatch. He smiled and chuckled, but I noticed his buddy in the cubicle behind him rolled his chair out and looked into the property manager's office. Those bastards know. Well, that's my experience with these beings. They are in southern Indiana, for sure. You can use my name, I don't care. I know what we heard and felt was real. Thanks for listening and good hunting. Dale Carver. Dale, appreciate you, man. You just said use your name, right? You can use my name, yeah, sorry. I'm a little slow this morning, not quite awake yet. There you go. Welcome to the club. Welcome to the club. 2 more members. How big is this club? How big is this club of people that know the truth? Well, no, there's more truth. Not the truth. Okay, I'm going through a folder I've got on here, which has a bunch of unreads on it. Excuse me. And there's an email here. I just glanced in the first paragraph. There's no name, no email address attached to the top, which normally is, and there's just initial at the bottom. I'm drinking my coffee, making me burp a little bit. Anyway, the email is titled Sasquatch Answers. Sorry to bother. You did ask me this, and I didn't know at the time you meant, quote, who do the Bigfoot say are hunting them, end quote. I thought you meant which people. I have to preface this with, the Bigfoot occasionally have things to say. The problem is those suckers lie about 80% of the time, if it's something they don't want to tell a human. And please remember, they are completely arrogant as far as humans are concerned. Plus, why on earth would they give us private information they consider as too telling? That said, they have said they are hunted by ETs. I swear to God. And yes, I thought they were just patronizing me, but it's a story they've told other people as well. They equally won't get specific as to which ETs they're talking about. Another reason I took it with a grain of salt. You asked, this is what one of them told me, and I'm pretty aware I sounded like a certifiable fruitcake for telling you what you asked. It's their story. And so far they seem to be sticking with it. Go figure, right? They also always told me they were, quote, a people, end quote, which I didn't doubt. So, telling if they are lying about one thing and not another is a definite crapshoot. That's the word on the street, right? Another point I want to make is until I was in my late 40s, I didn't even think a Bigfoot could be killed. They had me pretty buffaloed because I assumed their biology was very different from ours. I was pretty sure nothing but a headshot could kill one. Plus, much like jaguars and pit bull dogs, I also figured their skulls were too thick for a headshot to work. That's folklore about those skulls being too hard for a headshot. Depending on what you're using, sorry. Plus the knowledge that there's never only one. So if you did hit one with a 50 caliber, you weren't going to live to tell anyone about it anyways. I figured unless I could get my hands on a landmine, Bigfoot were pretty untouchable. It's only until the past 10 years I've been made aware that some indeed have been killed by private citizens because Bigfoot were off the hook, aggressive, and threatening family members. Can't say I was anything other than relieved. The best news I'd heard in a long time. Some have been nice, and others absolute shit heels. Doesn't matter. Even the nice ones fib. I swear at this point it's pathological. I get their point. They do not I get their point that they do what they do to survive. I just don't agree with lying. They can and do get in our heads and know if we are or not. What? They can and do get in our heads and know if we are or not. So it's BS. They have no problem shining us on about damn near anything. Anyways, you asked, I answered. Don't say everyone you asked gave you crickets. You can read this if you want. I give 0 Fs. It wasn't the answer I wanted out of them either, but I can't and won't lie. The Sasquatch people lie about as much as humans do to each other. No one's got that market cornered. Sad but true. Signed, LR. There you go. Yeah, I've heard from a lot of people that claim to be in somewhat contact with these people that they lie their faces off. So why do they do that? Why do they lie? What did they lose by telling the truth? Who enforces a kick in the ass if they do? Okay, next. Mark's unread. Hey, Steve. Between you and Survivor Man, thanks for making a difference. Leave my name away from reality TV stars. My name is Mike from Northeast Victoria, Australia. I'm 50 years young and was brought up on a tobacco property. So all I had was fishing and dirt bikes. When I started driving, me and my neighbor fished the Blue Range Mountains for trout with spinners for almost 20 years until I smelled, heard, and seen a Yowie jump 30 to 35 feet across a cleared passage like nothing. Holy shit, that'd be something to see, wouldn't it? Just like that one the other day, those guys saw the tracks, basically 2-foot jumping across 22-foot wide road. One single leap. That'd be pretty wild to see it go down, wouldn't it? This passage was about 1/8 of a mile long, starting from the river, and then just ended, as if a D11 had been in there sometime before, but wasn't. The next day I went to the Aboriginal Koori tribe and started to tell them what happened. The elder interrupted me before I said what I'd seen and told me, that's the big hairy man. This was 18 years ago, and I just can't get it out of my head because every time I go camping, he finds me wherever I am. A Canadian backpacker told me that they can sense anyone who has seen them. If they are in the scrub, and they can pull the blanket of time over themselves and be there near you for the rest of your life, and he's right. They can also tell if I'm talking about them or if I'm looking for them. They know I'm coming the night before I leave to go bush, while I'm packing my bag, because I see a red dot/orb in front of me every time. I promise everyone this is true. I've lived it. I've tried to camp since, but he keeps finding me. I know it's the same one because he jumps over my camp and lands right beside me and takes off. Feels like a truck engine falling from the top of the trees. I need to put it out there because these bush people are too much to deal with. Please, everyone, be careful. Mike. Wow. Tell him to leave you alone. Command him to leave you alone. That's pretty shitty. And yeah, they do know. I wonder what they think about me sharing all this shit online every day. They don't seem to be... There's no red eyes glowing out in the forest out there yet. Nobody beating on the house anymore. Never beat on the shop. They're not tormenting me too much, so I guess they don't mind me doing this, right? What time is it? All right, I got enough time for another one, maybe. I got to get set up here for Thomas Oswald. All right, here we go. I'm writing you regarding the experiences you speak about in your videos about Sasquatch. The spelling of that word should be a little bit shorter, lol. I myself have never experienced anything, any sighting or a visiting as such, and glad to say so. However, I have had incidents of the paranormal supernatural side over the years, and at the age of 57, I know what happened. And there is no doubt in my mind about it. While growing up with a family of 6 kids, I've had my share of strange all of my life until recently has had unexpected visits from wherever/whatever. I heard stories from my mom as early as before my birth of them living in houses that were not exactly livable for the most part. Strange happenings while a baby. And earlier we're told of footsies behind left on doorknobs that would dance in the night without anyone being awake. Footsies? Furniture moving around by itself without intervention of humans of any kind in the middle of the night. Glasses being thrown from across the room. The same. My mother never seen these things happen with her own eyes, although they happen just the same. She told me stories of actually trying to catch the culprit by peeking out of the old-type keyholes in the home. But alas, could never catch a glimpse of anything at any time. Another home she told of someone knocking on the door and no tracks left in the snow, in the snowstorm that was occurring outside at the time. This and more happened at a few of the homes when I was young. And as I got older, in 1968 or so, we moved into our Staying With It stable home. Since most of the older homes are older, in fact, than the one we finally settled in for good, I guess we thought it was all behind us. My mother started experiencing things again right after a friend of my oldest sister's grandfather died, whom she happened to be very close to. I was little at the time, so I can recall being corralled throughout the houses. Some type of ball lighting entered it and followed my sister from room to room. My father was trying to figure out what the hell it was, as he was not aware of something like this coming into homes, much less following someone around and such. But he put his entire hand through this ball that was glowing and around 12 to 16 inches in diameter, but nothing. He didn't feel anything, nor did it change in any way. He definitely came to the conclusion that it was not normal in any way known to us. And also, how and why did it follow my sister all throughout the home? That night ended none too soon for all of us. Holy shit. When I was 23, I had 3 children, and my husband and I were moving into what was our first house, renting, in 1986, thank God. I think I'm sensitive to weird stuff, and so is my younger sister. More so, I believe, than myself. We both seen darkness on one side of the house, even though we went through it separately and only met up in the car after I signed the 1-year lease. Huh? I seen a mist looking toward the home from the backyard on the right side of the home, and she seen a darkness of cloud in the same area. We both discussed it and knew it was weird, but I was so happy to be moving into a house instead of an apartment for a good rent that I blocked it out. Mistake on my part. To make a long story a bit shorter, I will say during the 2 years I lived there until moving in 1988, I experienced a hell my own. It started slowly with whispers during the day and night, things disappearing like keys, bar banisters. When one son walked down it one day, it just fell away, etc. It got worse as time went on, however. My mother stayed there one night while I went to the hospital with my husband as I was very ill. I had strep throat and the flu at once. My mother told me she heard men talking in the adjacent room. I knew they were men, but could not hear what was being said, as it was muffled. Sound familiar? She also heard noises in the upstairs bedroom where my daughter slept. She was 3 at the time, like things being moved around. But upon checking in on her, nothing was amiss. My daughter also found an imaginary friend while living there whom talked to her and lived in the closet. I think she called him Johnny Boy. I, of course, ignored this too, or played it down quite a bit. I heard my brother pull up one morning in his 70s race car with his loud engine running and told my husband while he was getting out of the shower that my brother was downstairs waiting for him. They worked with each other at the time. I remember thinking about getting up to have a cup of coffee with him at the time. When my hubby left the bathroom, right out our bedroom door, I told him this, and he shot back at me saying, "No, your brother's just pulling in right now." And sure enough, I heard the entire thing again. Strange, say you? We finally got out of there in '88, as my landlord came by to collect the rent and inform us that the rent would be going up $25 a month. I told him we aren't paying any more money to live in this haunted house, period. I heard you mention in other videos by people that when trying to wake their loved ones to hear or see what was going on, they would they would or could not wake. I experienced this myself late in our rental agreement. One night I heard the entire upstairs, including my bedrooms and my children's, being pounded on, all four sides at once. It was loud as hell, and I kept shaking my husband, who was always a light sleeper, to wake him, but nothing, absolutely nothing. It was as if he were drugged. He was never a man given much to wine nor weed, but still could not awake him. Sound familiar? I don't think these beings are here to help us in any way. Maybe once in a while they may do a good deed or three, but something sinister is within this, I feel. The Bible speaks about, quote, they keep changing themselves into the angel of light, end quote. Truth is truth, and the lie is the lie. Thank you for taking the time to read this. I have other encounters with people after leaving that house and what they heard / experienced, but wasn't sure if it was relevant to this email. If you'd like to hear, let me know. Thanks for reading. Be safe out there, even more so now. Evelyn Amaro. You can say my name, no problem at all. Oh, that's unfortunate. I don't like that shit. It's creepy. I don't know why, but remember when we were kids, there's all those Damien the Omen and the Heretic and all this nasty-ass demon devil dark occult shit was on TV. Ugh, always creeped the living shit out of me. I'd never watch that shit. Never even for entertainment as a kid, and I don't like it today. I just don't like it. Not into it. Not into it. Do I know the answers? Nope. No, I don't. Is everything connected? Obviously. Every single thing is connected without a doubt. I wonder how many people are shaking their head. Holy shit, me too, after hearing that one, right? All right, I think I can just squeak in one more. Then I got to set up for our guest. Excuse me. Good afternoon, Mr. Steve, sir. My name is Robert. I'm 34 years old, hailing from Skagit County, Washington. I love the content you bring to this world. Straight shooting, no BS. That's solid. Appreciate the kind words, man. I'm an avid outdoorsman who loves the solitude found walking the riverbanks and at the lakes. I started the venture in hunting in the last 7 years, and it's opened my eyes on a lot of things. My first interaction with something had happened while taking a friend fishing. We had walked a mile or so in this canyon stream and started fishing the steep part of the drainage. Excuse me. Through the sounds of the stream and the canyon, we could hear heavy pacing from behind us, which was just above on the ledge, as hard as we could to dismiss the sound. We could not. Our lizard brains told us to get out now. The two of us ran as fast as we could back to the vehicle. Once reaching the vehicle, we still had the urge to get in the vehicle fast as possible and leave. I've yet to return to this area. And fast forward a few years, I now have gained the desire to hunt and been hunting a zone off and on for a week, seeing grouse, bobcat, small deer. And on this one particular morning, I made the same hike but failed to realize the lack of animal life. On the way back out off the mountain, thinking, man, this day sucked, my hair stood on end. With each step I took down the rest of the mountain, I could hear the same steps coming from my left in the brush. I stopped for 20 minutes or so to listen, and nothing. And as I continued down the rest of the mountain, it followed. I was so scared shitless I could not lower my rifle until I made it down to the main road. Again, yet to return to that zone. And as my time in the woods has grown, has two of the entrance of these zones of nothingness, where if there was a squirrel within 500 yards, with gas I would hear it. I do not need photos, I do not need videos, as the sounds and feelings that I felt over the years while in the forest are proof enough. I do not need that shit. To this day I find myself saying, I'm just here for some food, and I'm out as I walk through the timber patches. Thank you for your content, Mr. Steve. The world needs more individuals like yourself. P.S. Here's a trail cam picture a good friend of mine is able to get of a stud. Hold on. Take care, Robert, man. Robert, appreciate you, man. Keep doing what you're doing. Don't give up. Don't quit. And that is a monster black-tailed deer for all the enthusiasts out there. That's a huge black-tailed buck. Beauty. Cool. Appreciate it, man. Hope you're still hunting. All right, I'm gonna go. But quick note, hitting the camera reminds me, a friend of mine yesterday was fishing. He's at the next dock over from us, and they video recorded a big shark yesterday for around Banfield, British Columbia. Is not too common, but it was a salmon shark. And a salmon shark can be best described as looking exactly like a small great white shark. And I'm going to show you the video here, if anybody curious who lives in the Pacific Northwest, right? Ready? Watch this. It's a frickin' shark. Right in tight to shore at the mouth of Banfield. Crazy, huh? There it is. Great big huge salmon shark just swimming around close to shore in Banfield. Not very common of a thing to see. And that's my knowledge. I don't think they're man-eaters. Well, not yet anyway. But anyway, I gotta get going. I gotta get set up for Thomas. Share my story at howtohunt.com. That's where you get it shared word for word, you guys. I'm not gonna stop. I'm gonna get everybody heard. See you tomorrow.